All right, today's demo is how to create an object with joints like this. This is a fish, obviously separated into pieces, and each piece is connected by a set of hinges. And we will use a technique of punching those shapes out of a larger shape so that you could actually use any shape you wanted and cut it into segments like this. So let's start from scratch. All right, so, yep, oops, hinge design. All right, so let's start by creating the hinges. I'm going to take a box, zoom in, and shrink it to 10 by 10. 10 millimeters is a good size to work with for a lot of things. So what's the basic structure of a hinge? Well, you may remember from the dynamic sculpture, but there's going to be three pieces. There's going to be a middle piece, and there are going to be two caps on the end. In this case, for reasons that will become clear later, I want the caps to be really long. So how far? Well, I guess we're going to respace these, but I want to keep it at 2. All right, so the idea is that the middle piece would be locked into the outer pieces and that they could rotate relative to each other. Okay, let me just pull this off to the side. And what kind of shape should we use for the pin? Well, I've used a cone. Let's try the paraboloid again. Zooming in on this, and I'm shrinking it to 10 by 10. So it matches everything else. And then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, move it roughly into place, and then use the camera to look around and make sure that I've got it perfectly overlapping. Now I'm just going to make one more change to this. Instead of it being 10 millimeters out, I want it to be a little stubbier just so it prints better, just to reduce the angles on that. I'm going to cut it all the way to 7. And I think it's sunken in by 1, so that means it's sticking out by 6. So I'm going to copy and paste that and mirror it, and then move this one to the other side. And I look around with the camera to make sure it's all lined up. Okay, cool. So I'm going to take one more of these, and I'm going to change it into a hole. And I'm going to line that up with this piece over here. Okay, and if it's flush with the edge, it'll look weird like that. Cool, so this is lined up perfectly. Now that it's lined up perfectly, I actually want to stretch this piece out for a while. And that is to link us to the next piece. So group it, cut that hole out, and I always forget this. I should just copy and paste this one instead of trying to make the same change twice. I'm going to mirror this in the horizontal direction, and I'm going to move it over here. So I think we are about ready to line this up with the other piece, except let's think about how wide we want the hinges to be on this new object. I want to create something a little bit smaller than the other one. So this is 66 millimeters wide. Let me cut it down to, I don't know, between 1 and 2 inches. And then line this cap back up again. That's great. Great, so I've got these 3 shapes. ready to merge, but before I merge them, I want to take just the red block, not anything else, and stretch that out as well. And that'll give us something to connect to the next piece. So now I'm going to go ahead and group these three things, and let's see if we can get it lined up perfect with the grooves. Oh, not even close, but I can fix it. Now I'm going for a 2mm gap in the middle here. Why? Because we decided that we're sticking out by 6, so that means if there's a gap of 2, now we're in there by 4, and if we end up sliding one way or the other by 2, you're still in there by at least 2, no matter what. So it's not going to fall apart, and that's the point. So what we need to do is complete the chain link, if you will. I'm going to shrink this guy down to 10. I'm going to make this flush, and we need to leave enough space for that white part to turn. Maybe I'll give it just a little more space. This is going to be a rather thin part. That's okay. And I just have to stretch it to connect those pieces. So yeah, we've already gotten a moving piece. Now let's keep going. I'm going to take just this little connector piece that I just made, copy and paste it, move it over here, and line it up with that. And now I'm just going to resize this a little bit. We want to leave enough space for the turning. Does that leave enough space for turning? I think so. Maybe give it just a little more. And I'm going to stretch this to there to be even, or roughly even. It's actually not super important if it's perfect on the edge or not. Great, so this is one link in the chain. I'm going to go ahead and group all of these things. See if I got all of them. Yeah, I think so. Great. So now I'm going to start copying and pasting. Copy and paste. Line that up and make sure you get that full gap in there. It doesn't matter too much how much it overlaps, except that you need that full gap for rotation. I think with the design I have in mind for this one, I think I want 5 pieces. Oh, that's 6, isn't it? Okay, let's stick with 5. Awesome. So I'm going to group all of this and move it into the center again. All right, so one way of creating an object would be to put other things on the outside, or to cut parts out of the outside, cut shapes out. But I'm going to try something completely different. First, let me change the color here so we can tell these two pieces apart. And now I'm going to, I was zooming in too far. I'm going to take this, and I want it to line up perfectly with the edge. Yep. And then drag it over the whole thing. Try to line it up again with the edge. Yeah, and actually it's okay if the hinge part sticks out a little bit. All right, we're almost there. So I am gonna now select just the hinge part, just the yellow part, make it into a hole. Group. And it's actually important that the hole stretches all the way to the side, and it can go past it if you want. So when I group this, it's probably going to take Tinkercad a second to render it, because we're getting a little complicated here. Oh, it didn't take that long. Yeah, so now we have this weird cutout shape that has the pins and the holes for the pins. And this I can now change into a hole. What would happen when I punch this hole out of something? Well, it's going to get hinges. So what do we want to punch it out of? I'll switch it back for now. I am just going to put it off to the side. I was thinking about a butterfly. Let's take a cylinder shape, and everything, I want to keep everything 10 millimeters. So let's stretch one part of the wing, and let's rotate that, and copy and paste, rotate this, or in fact I'll just mirror it, and line it up roughly with the other one. I'm pretty happy with that as one side of the wing. Copy and paste and mirror to get the other side. And now I'm just going to take, well, let's just use a new cylinder. Shrink to 10. And stretch it. Does it look like a butterfly yet? I think we're getting there. Maybe make this a little skinnier. And let's do one more thing, which is to put some little antennas on it. And I will just rotate those a little bit. I don't know. Those are some weird antennas, aren't they? I'm just going to delete them. All right, let's just stick with this. It's kind of a butterfly shape. Oh, I don't know. All right. Grouping it. And I'm going to stretch it at least up to the size of the stamper. And let me just line this up and look from underneath. That's about what it's going to look like. So all the hinges obviously have to be fully on there. We can't be messing around with that. And I would like for this part to extend past all of this. So I think I have that lined up pretty well. So let's make that into a hole again, and now I just have two shapes to group together. Oops. So I group those. Okay. Okay, so I see two problems here. The first one is that this didn't cut all the way through up at the top, which means that these two pieces would be stuck together. And then the other problem is right here. That's a very thin connection point, and it might be enough to hold that piece together, but we can do a little better than that. So I am going to ungroup it, and I'm just going to keep resizing this a little bit. I just want to stretch that. Oh, nope, undo, because I have two things selected. I just want to have the orange selected. Stretch that out a little bit in that direction. So we've solved the thin connection point problem. This, I just have to squish a little bit. It might look a little less like a butterfly when I do that, but it is important that the hole covers the entire thing. So I think I've solved both problems. Let's see. Regroup it. You can do it, Tinkercad. There you go. That looks wonderful to me. And how about this, just for fun? Let's, well, you can make it a keychain if you put it on here, although this is rather large for a keychain. But you could shrink this down. So it's currently 8 inches. If I were to shrink that, let's see, I want to hold the shift key when I do this. The hinges are getting smaller and smaller when I shrink it. So at a certain point, we're going to have problems, like the actual structure of the hinge will just be too tiny. But I think we're still doing fine here. As long as anything is at least a couple of millimeters wide, it should form just fine. So this I can maybe even shrink a little more. 3 inches wide. That's a pretty good keychain. And so the hinges are very tiny now, but I think they are still acceptable. It looks like if you see this is a 1 millimeter grid, so we've still got 5 or 6 millimeters of height on here. And that's pretty good. So let me just put that ring on there, and now I have an awesome keychain. Boom. So you could use this method to cut out from any shape on Earth.